Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something literally all of us deal with, but kind of rarely understand. I'm talking about our mind's wild ability to just totally hyperfixate on the negative. Like, you know how you can be having an absolutely stellar day, and then one tiny inconvenience pops up and just ruins the whole thing? Or why one single harsh comment is just bouncing around in your head at 2 a.m.? Well, today, we're going to flip the script. We're going to look at the brain not as your enemy, but as a fiercely overprotective guardian that's constantly telling a story of survival. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this super relatable scenario. Picture this. You do something awesome. 10 different people come up to you and they're just showering you with praise. Amazing job, you nailed it. But then one person casually drops, yeah, honestly, you're just not that good, right? What happens? Poof. Those 10 glowing compliments instantly vanish, gone. And later that night, when everything's quiet, that one single insult comes rushing back. You're replaying it while eating, while working, while just trying to fall asleep. And your brain is just whispering, hey, what if they were right?
Section 1. Meet your overprotective guardian, and why exactly the brain remembers pain. So to really understand why that one insult haunts you, we've kind of got to completely rethink how we view the human mind. Because the truth is, your brain wasn't actually designed to make you happy. I know, right? It was designed to keep you alive. Think of it as this fiercely loyal bodyguard. And sometimes, the way this bodyguard protects you, well, it feels an awful lot like overthinking and anxiety. It all comes down to what we call the negativity bias. See, thousands of years ago, your brain followed a very simple ancient rule for survival. If you completely missed a beautiful sunset, absolutely nothing bad happened to you. You were fine. But if you were walking through the forest and you missed the rustle of a predator or a sneak in the grass, that was fatal. Missing a single danger was literally a life or death mistake. So naturally, your brain evolved to notice, remember, and react way more strongly to the negative stuff.
And this brilliantly illustrates the wild disconnect we experience today. The exact same survival mechanisms our ancestors used to spot literal predators in the wild, yeah, they are still running in our heads right now. The catch is, today they're being triggered by just completely ordinary, modern inconveniences. Someone leaving a nasty comment on social media or you bombing a math test doesn't actually threaten your life, but your ancient guardian, it doesn't know the difference. It just rings the alarm bells as if a tiger is quite literally jumping out of the bushes.
Moving on to Section 2, survival of the anxious and the danger of the tribe. If you have ever felt totally paralyzed by social anxiety or just terrified of what other people think of you, you've got to consider the historical stakes of human connection. Early humans survived entirely in groups. That was it. If you got rejected by the tribe back in the ancient era, you were exiled. And being all alone out in the wild meant less food, zero protection, and pretty much certain death. So the brain naturally became incredibly sensitive to social threats. Fast forward to today, the modern era, rejection might just mean, an embarrassing moment at a party, a rude comment online, or maybe losing a follower. But your ancient brain, it still equates that minor social friction with the deadly threat of being exiled. That is exactly why one rude comment hurts so deeply. To your brain, it feels like a giant warning sign that you are about to lose your safety.
So when you catch yourself just obsessing over some super embarrassing thing you did 5 years ago, or fixating on a mildly critical email from your boss, I really want you to remember this. It's not because you are weak. It's not because you're broken. It is simply because your brain is ancient. Your anxiety, that endless overthinking, they aren't personal flaws. They are literally just the workings of outdated survival hardware that's trying its absolute best to keep you safe in a world that has completely changed.
Section 3. A modern mental prison and confusing intensity with truth. Okay, so we've established why the brain does this, but let's think about how these ancient survival tactics actually physically manifest in your body and how they can trap us. Positive thoughts like, hey, I did a really good job today, they usually feel soft, quiet, right? They're kind of like a gentle light. But negative thoughts, oh boy, they are loud, urgent, and heavy. They act just like blaring fire alarms going off just because you, burn a piece of toast. When a negative thought hits, your heart starts beating faster, your stomach gets tight, your mind starts racing. Your body is quite literally physically bracing for an attack.
And here's where we run into trouble. Because that physical reaction is just so incredibly intense, we fall into a really dangerous trap. The brain often confuses intensity with truth. Like if your heart is pounding out of your chest and your stomach is in knots, your brain just assumes that the negative thought causing all this must be an undeniable fact. But listen, A strong feeling does not equal a true fact. A lot of times, a negative thought is not a fact at all. It's really just fear wearing the mask of logic. Your protective guardian is saying, hey, I'm just looking out for you. But this intense level of protection can so easily become a mental prison.
Section 4. The power of repetition and walking the mental path.
So how exactly do these passing intense thoughts turn into permanent fixtures in our minds? Well, it all comes down to a really fascinating concept called neuroplasticity. This is basically how our repetitive thoughts actually physically shape our mental habits. Imagine you're walking through a field of super tall grass. The very first time you push through it, it's tough, right? There's no path. But if you walk that exact same route every single day, eventually a clear, permanent trail just naturally forms. Well, your brain works the exact same way. Every single time you think to yourself, I'm not good enough, you're walking down that mental path. The more you repeat a negative thought, the easier it becomes for your brain to just automatically default to that exact same worn-out path in the future.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because this pattern escalates into something much deeper, terrifyingly fast. What starts in step 1 as just a single, isolated thought, oof, I had a bad moment, quickly turns into a pattern. From a pattern, it hardens into an automatic habit. And finally, we hit step 4, identity. This is where you stop saying, I failed at this one specific task, and you start saying, I am a failure. The thought has literally attached itself to who you fundamentally believe you are.
And this brings us to a really profound realization. Once a negative thought reaches that identity level, it is incredibly hard to shake. Why? Because at that point, you're not just fighting a thought anymore. You are fighting a story you believe about yourself. Your overprotective brain remembers the sting of failure or rejection, and it writes this whole narrative to ensure you never, ever experience that pain again. It convinces you to avoid taking risks, avoid putting yourself out there, avoid new relationships. Your guardian brain actively chooses comfort over courage to prevent future pain, even if it ends up stopping you from truly living your life. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Taming Your Ancient Brain and Relieving the Guardian. Look, we know we're kind of stuck with this ancient hardware, right? We know we can't just hit delete on negative thoughts. But the good news? The really good news is we can absolutely take away their power. Next time a negative, spiraling thought pops into your head, I want you to just pause, take a breath, and ask yourself this exact question. Is this a fact or is this fear? This simple little question, it's literally a superpower. It instantly creates cognitive distance. Instead of just being swept away and becoming the thought, you take a step back. You become an observer. You stop aggressively fighting your thoughts, and you just start gently questioning them.
Right after that, you follow it up with a second question. What else could be true? This totally challenges your brain's rigid little survival story. If your brain is screaming, I am totally failing at life right now, just ask yourself, okay, what else could be true? Well, maybe you aren't failing at all. Maybe you're just in the middle of learning something incredibly difficult. Or maybe that person didn't actually reject you. Maybe they just completely misunderstood you. By actively poking holes in the fear, you strip it of its authority. But keep in mind, positive thoughts are like that gentle light we talked about, while negative ones are the blaring fire alarms. So if you want that gentle light to stick around, it requires some actual conscious attention. You have to actively give those positive thoughts extra time to survive in your brain. And we do this through deliberate practices, expressing gratitude, practicing daily reflection, keeping a journal, cultivating self-awareness. I know they sound like trendy buzzwords, but they're not. They're literal, practical tools to help your brain hold on to positive experiences just a little bit longer. You literally have to train your brain to notice safety and progress just as easily as it naturally notices danger.
So if you take nothing else away from this explainer, remember this. You are living in a modern world with an ancient brain. The goal of understanding all of this is not to declare war on your mind or try to somehow destroy this overprotective guardian. Not at all. The goal is simply to provide it with the gentle guidance it desperately needs in a world it just wasn't built for. So the next time your brain starts sounding that giant fire alarm over a tiny mistake or some awkward comment, please don't hate yourself for it. Just recognize it for what it actually is, and perhaps use this powerful, compassionate little mantra to speak directly to your own mind. Thank you for trying to protect me, but I am safe now. If you can learn to relieve your ancient guardian of its duty when there's no actual danger around, you might just find that peace and courage you've been looking for. So I'll leave you with this. What story will you choose to believe about yourself today?